I'm going to do a quick video on these two gigantic network appliances I just got off eBay. Picked them up for about, I think, $10 for the set of two with free shipping. They're both by Mi5 Networks. This one's the 007 Webgate, and this is the Central Intelligence 100. Ooh. I took the lids off them briefly. Basically, the difference that I can see between them, other than the fact that this one has some bypassed additional Ethernet ports, this one has dual processor, and this one has space for dual processor, but only has one installed. My guess is the intelligence part needs dual processors. We've got just serial and USB on the front. These modules are for fiber, gigabit fiber, and you can pick and choose which one. I have a couple in the closet, but I can't be bothered to get them out. Oh yeah, and there's also differences in the ports here too. On the back, it's just two hot swappable serial ATA drives and a reset button and redundant power supplies. Nothing too interesting back there. It's heavy. I don't want to turn them all around to just get that shot. The serial ATA drives were all removed from these. The seller was nice enough to actually put pictures of the drive trays empty, which a lot of sellers on eBay don't, and you buy the drive or buy the unit and find out that it's been opened and the drive removed. A lot of companies require the drives to be destroyed to protect privacy, that sort of thing. Banks, for example. But this guy was nice enough to actually put pictures on it that say, or at least show you, that the drives were removed. They were probably in the 80 gig range, judging by the age of the hardware. So I'm going to open up one of them and we'll pop off the processor and see what it is. I assume it's a Pentium 4 base Xeon. There are a million fans in this thing, in each of them, so I don't know if I'll plug one in just to see how loud it is, but it's going to be loud and it's going to use a lot of power, and it probably doesn't do very much these days. So from what I can tell, I mean, like, I didn't find very much information on what these are actually for. My suspicion is that they are intrusion detection and or load balancing, just based on the multiple WAN and LAN connections. I got the lid off the Central Intelligence one. As you can see, there are dual processors, 4 sticks of memory. Judging by their size and the fact that there's a fan on top of them, these might be fully buffered memory sticks, which are pretty uncommon. They basically operate differently than regular DDR and whatnot. They have a memory controller on each chip. It's complicated and boring, but they get hot, so they have fans usually. There's a PCI network or dual port serial ATA card. Even though there's serial ATA on the motherboard, I can see that off in the corner. There's also parallel ATA and a CF card slot. Some of the front ports are actually on a module, which we'll take off, and the LCD is connected via parallel, which means this is probably one of those weird ass displays that I've seen in other models that nothing really can talk to, and I'll probably just throw it away. There's side mounted power connectors, ATX and the 8-pin power. Not too much else. There's the bays for the serial ATA hot swap bays, and the large power supply. This is made by Emacs. It's listed as 460 watt, but there's actually 2 of them stacked up, so they're redundant. And yeah, I'm gonna just rip the board out of this thing so I don't have this giant metal case on the desk. I've taken off the screws, but you'll note how this motherboard is not going anywhere. That means these screws are going down into the case, which tells me that this is almost certainly an Intel Socket 604 board. The heatsink design on those almost always bolts right through to the actual chassis instead of into a bottom plate that screws onto the board. So I'm gonna have to take off all the fans and probably this thing too. With the motherboard finally out, you can see that it uses a split power connector for the two serial ATA drives, the older style Molex, and it's actually a drive style connector that connects to the motherboard. Usually there are no connectors like that on a motherboard. They come from the power supply directly, like this would plug right into the drive. Instead, it's actually taking power from the main ATX connection, routing it through the board, and then just feeding the actual drives from over here. It's a little odd setup. Usually this is only found in very small cases where the power supply may not actually run all that way around the case, or may have a power adapter which plugs in, and then the board is responsible for creating the actual hard drive connections for power. I also noticed that there's this single wire connection coming from somewhere. I think it's actually coming from within the power supply, so it may have to do with the hot swapping. I'll look on the board where that was plugged in. I also noticed that at the back there's three what appear to be either 60 or 80 millimeter fans, so this was probably pretty damn loud when it's running. I took apart all the front assembly and peeled off the actual big sticker that was on the front of the case. This is covering up the membrane keypad right here, and this just goes via ribbon cable to a 4-pin. See if I can break this off. No, whatever. It's just a 4-pin 0.1-inch header. Nothing too special. That plugs right into the LED or LCD module. This is physically larger than your standard 16:2 LCD, but it is a 16:2. I have seen this board before. This is an LCM 16:2, named after the display, of course. This, from what I can tell, is just a basic parallel interface for an LCD. I don't think it's supported by LCD proc, although I could be mistaken. I do have one. I've just never bothered to actually try and plug it in or anything. As you can see, it uses just a standard module that plugs in, and it has the 0.1-inch and the whatever inch this one is. I can't remember what the size of these are. They're the mini style header connectors, and it uses a 4-pin standard power connector for a floppy drive, and this is where the keypad plugs in. The front of the case has space for a bunch of LEDs, which happen to be on the control board. This is the, well, it's not really a control board, it's more of the management board. It has some little RFI tape on this, 2 USB ports, the serial port, a little reset tactile switch. Now, as for all these LEDs, there is space for them in the metal case, but they've blocked off all but 2 and even put metal tape to keep the light from shining through. I don't know why they do that, unless it's just totally not supported. It's only power and power fail that are actually set up to shine through, which is a little odd. Peeling away the rest of this, you can see that there's actually bays. There's 3 of them. These are here because this whole case and whole motherboard and everything is a standard product made by someone else. This is the NSA 2189N8, which is a really fancy name. Basically, they sell this as a whole network appliance platform, and these are totally modular, and I'll get on to the actual cards later, but the motherboard has space for these 3 bays, and you can put in different Ethernet cards and whatnot. This particular one hasn't been rebadged or anything except from the sticker on the front. So, you know, we'll dig into it in a second, but you can see once you peel away all this stuff that even though this company is selling this as their own product and, hey, look, you know, we make this really fancy thing, they just bought it all in and put their own software on it. with the motherboard out of the case, one, you can see that it's nice and dusty. You can now see the modular design of this motherboard. There are these three fancy surface mount sockets, and I'll go into these actual modules in more depth later, but you can see that each one plugs in here, and you can have up to three, and they normally have these brass risers here. But yeah, so the idea of this system is that you can sell people different port configurations, because they're all different styles of port, fiber optic, whatever. I found a list of them in the PDF that I found on this board. Some of the things I've noticed on this board: one, there is actually a graphics chip. One of these that's parallel. One of these must be video somewhere. Maybe this connector down here. Whatever it is, I'm sure I don't have the right connector for it. But, you know, it's good to know that it actually has a real video card on it. You could actually potentially use this as a system. The processors actually weren't 604 sockets. I thought they were, because usually 604 sockets, like I said, are screwed into the frame, but they opted to do that with this particular one. This one uses the LGA 771 socket. And it's actually dual E5450 chips, which are quad-core 3 GHz, 1333 MHz bus 64-bit Xeons. They're rated for 80 watts, which is a lot of power. But there are 2 of them, so you with 8 cores, you could actually use this as a rendering machine, assuming you can actually boot it properly. You can tell they use a lot of power because they're actually using what appear to be TO220s for the power drive, or the voltage regulation for the processor. I don't think I've ever seen TO220s used in a motherboard, unless it's really old. So they're obviously going for a lot of power in this one. This may actually support the I think the highest Intel used was like 125 watt processor, so it's possible this is designed as a platform for those much higher power processors. I'll go into more detail on each part of the board. I just really wanted to show like the overview of how the modular system is designed on this board. There's also a mini PCI slot. The riser, or the card here, which again I'll go into more detail later, provides the 64-bit PCI slot that is used in the system for the serial ATA controller. Like I said before, there's a CF card, and you got some more power crap, and you know, here's the Molex connector for the hard drives. And I'm going to start prying off some heat sinks and take out the memory, and we'll take a look. Much like the Riverbed system I already looked at, this uses a very large memory controller chip. This is the SL9TP memory controller, and it can support up to 64 gigs of fully buffered DIMMs, which, like I said before, are a little bit unusual. It looks very similar to a regular DIMM, but you can see there's a very large chip in there, and that's actually the controller chip for this DIMM. And you need always need a heatsink on them, and I believe the specification basically always says you need active cooling. This is a 2 gig stick. There were 4 of them in it, so it's actually got an impressive 8 gigs in it, and it's a PC 5300 speed. This is labeled APacer, but it's also labeled as Samsung, who probably is the OEM of the thing. You can see that if you take a regular DDR2 stick and line them up, there. If you line them up, you can see that, oh look, they don't match. So the design prevents you from actually putting in the wrong one. See, that's the way it's supposed to go. They've made them offset by a large margin. These little notches on DIMMs are actually almost all different. They're keyed for voltages and they're keyed for technology and stuff like that. Older memory sticks use this notch to differentiate 3.3 volt and 5 volt. Lots and lots of different RAM specs have ever so slight variances in where this notch is. This is the voltage regulator module for the board. As you can see, this thing is pretty intense. Probably the largest voltage regulator I've ever seen on a motherboard. It has these huge chopped off Fairchild MOSFETs, very big surface caps, big inductors, chokes, whatever. And it's just gigantic. The sockets are just the standard pins. Don't worry, I'm not keeping this board. I do not care that I'm destroying the pins. Oh my god, the pins! You'd be surprised how many motherboards are on eBay that are like, oh look, I've got this expensive motherboard for sale. It's only 10 bucks. By the way, I bent a few pins while I was installing it. These are newer style sockets where the contacts are on the board, which is good and bad. I mean, previous models had pins, and if you broke a pin, you destroyed the chip. In this case, you bend a pin, you destroy the motherboard. Take your pick as to which one's worse, right? Yeah, I'd even like finish cleaning off all the thermal paste and whatnot off these because I don't intend to keep this board. Yeah, so here you go, the two sockets, and you got the big mounting screws. It's kind of hard to read the number off the chip, but I believe this is the Intel SL9 7Q chip, which is basically a big I/O controller. It provides serial ATA, dual gigabit, parallel ATA, 8 USB ports, all USB 2, PCI, all sorts of stuff. It's essentially the big platform controller hub for the two Xeons on this board. Moving along, there's also the CF card and a spot for a parallel ATA cable and ES1000 graphics chip, which is a very, very basic graphics chip. I've seen on many server boards. There's also the 40-pin connector here for the front panel board. And that's about it. There's not much else on it. You can see the board is a revision C. Great. And again, the layer of dust on it. BIOS chip. Yep, nothing too interesting. I'm going to get real close for one of these high-density connectors. And this is one of the 3 high-density connectors used for connecting the modules. From the documentation, these are all PCIe. Oh, and it even says it, PCIe. So they are quite modern, and they're not too big. Let's see if I can pry off some of these caps so you can see. Again, I'm not keeping the board, don't worry. Here's the other end of the connector. As you can see, it's a very high density connector, and you can even see the lines running up. Sorry if it's not focusing properly. But yeah, they just plug in, and then you get your Ethernet ports. I've got the Webgate model running, and despite its immense noise, it's actually only pulling 60 watts, which isn't that much power. Again, this is the single processor version, so the other one presumably pulls quite a bit more, but you know, it's actually not terrible. This chip's already getting hot, the memory controller, and I'm sure the memory, no, memory's not getting warm yet. Usually FB DIMMs get really hot, but they've got this nice fan blowing on it, so I just wanted to see what it would do. There's nothing on the display, and pressing the buttons makes no difference, so obviously there's no internal system to boot it. You need the hard drives, which are not included, and I don't have a video connector that would plug into the onboard video port to actually give me a port to use, so I can't really try running any operating systems on this thing, so I think I'm just going to rip this one apart to take out the chip, maybe sell it on eBay, and mess around with these modules once I get them all out. I'm going to go through the cards now. This particular one is a dual SFP gigabit card. These are modules to let you put in any kind of fiber optic connection you want. I forgot the name of them earlier. This particular one is the NSK 54 6GB 2P, which is a lovely model name like all the other things in this product. This one allows you to use a 64-bit PCI slot. This appears to be a converter chip, or a bridge chip I should say. It's got a cooling fan with an actual 3-pin tachometer control. It also uses the Intel 8254 6GB chipset for its 2 connections. The card itself only works in the first slot. The other modules only support cards without the PCI slot. Here's the chip, and you can see there's actually a thermistor under here. I don't really like the design of this because the thermistor isn't actually touching anything really. It's just squished between or under the heatsink. You can see it's not even attached to it, it's just kind of resting there. So it may be kind of intermittent, and you don't really want that in a fancy system like this. Here's the fan itself with a little bit of thermal paste. It's a very thin aluminum piece. And getting that out of the way, the next one up here is a 4-port gigabit Ethernet module. This particular one, I'm not really sure what the name of it is, because it's not really listed in the PDF that I have, and I'm sure it's here somewhere. Oh, here we go. The NSK 571 CP4RB. Oh, love those names. It's here too on the board. This is a real basic 4-port Ethernet card. I have 2 of them. I took the heatsink off on this one, and you can see the Intel controllers. I think these are basically all the same. They're all Intel 82571EB chipsets, and they're dual port each one. And again, this one has a little thermistor to rest underneath the heatsink. Nothing too special. And the last one is actually a very similar to the last one in that it's a 4-port Ethernet, but this one has a relay bypass system on it to allow these ports to short out and these ports to short out. The card has, like the previous one, has provision for a fan, but it's not installed. It's just a heatsink, and it uses the same dual chipset design as the other one. Yeah, basically the same thing, but with relays. Nothing too special. And the last card, which is the odd one out, is a 3-ware dual port serial ATA card. It's a 64-bit PCI, and as you can see, it comes in this nice bracket. This plugs into the port on the card with the SFP connectors on it, and it just provides 2 Ethernet ports. Nothing too special. I don't really like 3-ware. 3-ware is now LSI, by the way. 3-ware I hate now because they dropped all support for macOS in their software, which is annoying. When I upgraded to Mavericks, kernel panics. Ugh. Yeah, and they're like, nah, we're not releasing any new drivers for that, so good luck. So I basically threw away their card. What a shame. But yeah, I've got 2 of these PCI ones. These ones aren't worth very much. They're usually on eBay for like $5, so I'll probably just chuck them out. But that's the last card, and probably the last item for this thing. These were kind of oddball devices in that they're actually a platform, and it's all custom. If it included the drives, it might have been worth picking up for $10 because you can resell the drives at least. The processors are pretty decent, so I may be able to resell those. And it actually only pulled 60 watts, at least the low power version of the 2 models I had. The other one probably pulls close to 120. So, you know, in theory, if you could pick up the other one for not too much money, it might actually be a pretty decent server of some type, or even like a router for a really fast connection. But again, it's kind of wasteful to use a system that's pulling like 60 plus watts for a router. The 2 hot swappable drives, not really enough to use as a NAS. So, yeah, it's one of those systems that fall in this weird category where it's not expandable enough to be a home NAS if you just buy one used, and it's not low power enough to be used as a router or other networking equipment. So I mean, it could probably handle a lot of connections on a website. Like if it was just serving web traffic, it could probably handle like thousands of simultaneous connections. But you know, it's really not something I'd recommend picking up. I got them for pretty cheap. Like I said, about 10 bucks for 2 of them with free shipping. At that price, I'm sure I can get the money back after shooting this video from the parts. I'm not sure how much the FB DIMMs sell for on eBay. Maybe they're still worth something. Who knows? I know one series of Mac Pro use the FB DIMM, so there may be a market in there for it. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, that's it for this one. They're big devices, but kind of boring, aside from the neat custom modular aspect of it. Almost forgot the power supply. This is an Emax model R2W-6460P-R. They're a custom designed one with a high current custom connector at the back. They use dual 40mm fans with a nice pull-out handle. You just press this little latch in and pull, and it just uses a standard power connector. And if you take the top off, they put I hate when they put heatsink compound on the top of the unit, and it's not like this. I like this is fine. This is the actual like silicone goop or whatever it is. It's like a pad, whereas the actual compound, it gets everywhere. It gets on the screws, so when you take the screws out and you're holding the screws, you get compound all over you. It's horrible. Yeah, it looks like a pretty standard power supply. These big pads on everything. Whoa, that one's really attached. I think they actually glued it. Maybe, yeah. Looks like there's some glue on this. Like some contact cement or something. They got a big one here. Yeah. Not too interesting. Just a pretty high density power supply. They've got what appear to be Nichicon caps or Nippon Chemicon caps. It's hard to tell. Everything's been gooped. You know, overall it looks quite nice. Like they've put sleeves over everything and wire tied it all, and you know, not much to it. It's just pretty standard power supply for a rack mount unit. I do like this little heatsink with the two TO220s just screwed right through. I like how the bolts holding both of them. Clever. And you got some digital boards running vertically, and that's probably the power devices, and that's probably the bridge rectifier. I don't know. I can't be bothered to take this thing apart. I just didn't want to forget to open it up just in case there was something really cool in it, which there is, of course, not.